Okay, so we just finished illustrating our comic strips, and now we're moving on to the presentation aspect of this project. Now, when we're talking about the presentation aspect, we need everyone's projects to be on display because this is our performance aspect of our related arts class. So I know that the music class does concerts. In PE, you're playing games and showing how you know how to play these games. And in art class, we're showing our knowledge by doing our project and then showing this project to the school. So what we're going to do today is cut out our comic strip and then put it on to the paper I just showed you. We're going to be matting it, also known as framing it. So what we're going to start with is our pair of scissors. Now, everybody has been trained in this room to use scissors responsibly, if we remember the Symbols of Me project. So what I want you to do is thumb goes into the circle shape, and then 3 fingers or 4 fingers, depending on how big your hands are, go into the bean shape, the long bean shape. Okay, and now you should be able to cut. So remember, we don't put a stabbing hand with the scissors. We don't run with the scissors, obviously, so we need to use these scissors safely. Okay, so we're going to start with our comic strip, and I've already done it a little bit. Now, you may be wondering, Mr. Velikan, why would you start it before you did the video? That's because Mr. Velikan forgot and started doing it during the announcements. So I'm going to show you what I've already cut. I already cut a little part off of the side, but I can show you on the other side of the page what I did. So I want a little bit of a gutter on the side, but I didn't want one that was as big as my main gutter. So I was going to cut about 1 centimeter off of this left side. Now, if you like that space, you can keep it. It's totally up to you. Now, when we're looking at our panels, once we've got that line, I want you to think about how many panels you actually have and which ones you need to cut out. So I only have 4 panels on my comic strip, which means that these top 2 are going to get cut off. Now, if you have 5 panels and you have a free space down here or up here, you might want to cut that one out instead of these top 2. So cut out whatever panels you didn't use. Okay, so the next step is going to be doing this. Now, when I'm cutting out these panels, I don't want to cut on the bottom line. And that's because I want a little bit of gutter on top. So I'm going to cut on the bottom line of the top panels if I have 4 boxes. Now, if I have 6 boxes, I'm going to go to the top of this box and then go out another centimeter. So you would be cutting about here to make your box. So see how I've got a little bit of extra gutter space on the top? Okay. Now, when you're cutting, if you are cutting a little bit too quick or a little bit hectically, you might get little frays in your paper. Notice how there's little jagged edges or little like gaps that look like hairy bits. I want you to go back in and you need to cut these down and shape them. So I want to go back in and very carefully, very slowly, I'm going to cut them down so that I have a nice clean edge, all right? Okay, so when I have 4 panels, I'm going to cut down at the bottom of these boxes. So I've already done that, and you can see that I still have a little bit of that gap. So I've got a gutter on top, a gutter in between, a gutter on the bottom, and a gutter on the side. Now the next step is to make a bubble around our title. So once I cut past this first box, I'm going to shape it to my title. Now, I know that some of you have titles that stretch across the whole page. If this is the case, I just want you to round out the corners or round about the shapes that you see and what you want to cut out. But if you've only got your title on this bottom part or a little bit above, then I want you to go in and put a bubble around it like I have. So I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to start cutting with 1 centimeter out from my drawing. So if I'm cutting, I don't want to be cutting right on the lines. I want to give it a little bit of breathing room. So I'm going to cut along a centimeter gap. Now, when I'm doing this, I'm also thinking about which hand is moving. So if you notice, my right hand isn't really moving at all other than to change the way that the scissors are angled and to open the scissors up and close them. What's really moving the paper is my left hand. So I'm curving the paper with that left hand so that my scissor hand can focus on making my cuts. Okay, and then I'm going to round it out and cut it off. So now I've got my complete comic strip, and we can recycle this into the gray trash cans at your desks. And then I've got my comic strip. I've got my title, I've got my illustrated by, so make sure you've got that illustrated by, and then I've got my comic strip. Now the next step is the matting process, or the framing process. So what we're going to do is after you've got your comic strip all cut out, you're going to go over to the side counter by sinks 3 and 4, and over there you'll see a ton of different construction paper colors. Now I've got 2 examples of these. I've got a yellow and purple. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my comic strip and I'm going to place it on the construction paper. So I want to see which paper looks best with my colors in my drawing. Now, when we're deciding this, we want to think about some colors that can complement the artwork. So with my artwork, I don't have any really crazy pinks or anything. So if I chose a pink, it wouldn't really match up. But I noticed that I've got purple in my title, I've got purple in my mom's shirt, and I've also got yellow in some of the different spots. So I decided that yellow and purple could be my 2 options. So I'm looking, I don't think yellow really works too well, but I think purple is a perfect fit. So purple is going to be the one that I choose. So you're picking one paper to put with your picture. Okay, now we're going to do the gluing process. Now we've talked about gluing before when we did our symbols of me. So I'm going to take the glue stick cap off and I'll have a purple tip. Now remember that your glue will dry clear. When we're using the glue sticks, we don't want them to be pushed out all the way. We just want a little bit showing. Like this, that's perfect. Just a little bit on the top. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to think about how I want my picture to be framed. Now, when we're doing our comic framing, we don't want it to be crooked because this will look a little bit goofy when it's on our final. When we've got a newspaper, all the comic strips are straight and horizontal. So we've always got our comic strips like so. So what I need you to do is look at your comic strip and look at the space between the bottom and your comic strip. So I might move it down a little bit so that it's a little bit closer to the bottom of my paper. Now I'm going to leave about 1/2 inch of the paper until the end. So I don't want it to be super, super close. It should be about that. And now the next part I'm going to do is I'm going to center it in between the left and the right side. So I'm going to look at the gaps on these 2 sides, and I'm going to see that they're a little bit the same. So I want these to be the same. And I think I've done a pretty good job. So if yours is like this, and we've got a little tiny one and then one big one, we want to correct that. So move it over a little bit until they look fairly the same. Now it's okay if it's not perfect. We don't have to get a ruler out, but as long as they look like they're very similar, that's what's important. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip my paper over, and then I'm going to take my glue stick. When I'm gluing up my comic strip, I always want to glue the comic strip itself. Whatever is smaller is what you should be gluing. Now, I'm not going to put any glue onto my construction paper. So I'm going to take my glue stick, and I'm going to do an outline of the edge. So I'm going to outline this edge, and I'm going to do all the way around. And this glue will shrink as it dries. And that means that we need to pay attention about how much we're using. Because if we use too much, it'll get wrinkles in the paper when it dries. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to put dots or crosses like this to get glue on the middle of my project. So notice I have little areas of glue, and then I have open areas so that it doesn't dry funky. Now I'm going to go back to how that was, and I'm going to line it up. So make sure you have the same centering that you just practiced. So I'm going to line it up, and then I'm going to press it down. And notice how I'm using my fingers to press down the paper and get it so that it's completely flat. So I want this to be completely flat on my paper. Okay, so now I have my paper all matted up. I've got the comic strip on the construction paper, and it's all one piece. Now this will look nicer when we put it onto our newspaper displays, and it'll look nicer if it's hanging in the hallway, in your house, or if it's hanging in the art show. All right, so that's the final thing that we have to do before writing our name on the back. So I know you have your name on the front, but I want you all to go back in and put your name. So I'm going to put Mr. Velikan, and then I'm going to put P, and then whatever your period is. So either P2 or P5. And then I want you to put your team number on here, okay? Because your team number is going to let us pass these back a little bit easier once we're all the way finished with them being on display. All right, go ahead and get to work, and this is the end of the demo.